There is a secret you can carry upon your person, as simple as a coin in the pocket, yet it will open the floodgates of supply. For what you hold outwardly is nothing compared to what you carry inwardly. If you will take this invisible treasure and keep it with you, your money problems will cease, and you shall walk as though the earth itself were your inheritance. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. These words, so simple, so easily passed over, hold within them the entire mystery of life. The kingdom is not some distant realm reserved for a future heaven after the body is laid down. The kingdom is fulfillment here and now, the invisible realm that surrounds you and interpenetrates you, the eternal storehouse of every answered prayer. When Scripture tells us it is the Father's pleasure to give you the kingdom, it is declaring that what you seek is already yours, not because of merit, not because of labor, but because it has been the will of the invisible power from the beginning that you should inherit all things. To inherit is not to earn, but simply to receive, to awaken and claim that which was always prepared for you. Now, when you hear the word Father, do not imagine some figure outside yourself, dwelling in remote heavens. The Father spoken of is life itself, the unseen reality that beats your heart, that breathes your breath, that gives you the awareness that you are. It is that awareness, your own consciousness, which forever delights in bestowing upon you the kingdom. And the kingdom, if it is all, includes wealth, supply, opportunity, joy, freedom from all sense of lack. Therefore, to say it is the Father's good pleasure is to say that the deepest truth of your being, your own consciousness, wills and delights to pour into manifestation the fullness of your desire. The difficulty lies not in the giving, but in the receiving. The Father gives without ceasing. The invisible is always pressing toward visibility, always yearning to break into form. But man, blinded by appearances, blocks the gift by insisting that he lacks. He looks at his empty purse and says, I have nothing. He looks at his debts and says, I am poor. In that declaration, he shuts the gate of the kingdom, though the treasures of heaven stand waiting at the door. Yet the moment he dares to say, even against the evidence of the senses, I have, the gate swings open and the invisible flows into the visible. For it was always the Father's good pleasure. It was always the delight of consciousness to give all that the kingdom contains. Consider the words again, it is your Father's good pleasure. This is not a reluctant gift, not something you must wrestle from unwilling hands. It is pleasure, delight, joy. It is as natural for consciousness to create as it is for the sun to shine or for the river to flow. The sun does not strain to give light. The river does not struggle to run. So your inner being does not withhold, but forever radiates, forever gives. You are the one who must place yourself in the path of that giving by assuming the state of having received. Imagine for a moment the child of a king, growing up in the palace, surrounded by treasures, attended by servants, knowing nothing of lack. The child does not beg for bread, nor tremble that tomorrow will bring hunger. The child assumes supply because it is the natural order of his environment. And so it is with you. You are the heir of the kingdom, and it is the Father's pleasure to give it to you. Yet you must become as that child, living in the assurance of supply, taking for granted that abundance is your birthright. Only then does the invisible become visible. Only then does the promise take on flesh. Now let us consider this mystery of the pocket. For when I tell you to keep something in your pocket, I do not speak of cloth or thread, nor of the coins that pass from hand to hand. I speak of the secret pocket of your heart, the inner chamber where the treasures of heaven are stored. Whatever you carry in this pocket, the world will draw out and place in your hand. If in this pocket you store fear, fear will come. If in this pocket you keep the thought of insufficiency, insufficiency will rise to meet you. But if in this pocket you keep wealth, if you secretly nourish the feeling of being supplied, then supply must flow to you by ways you cannot now devise. Think of your pocket as a treasury into which you alone may reach. Others cannot see it, others cannot touch it, yet what you place there becomes the coin with which you purchase every experience of life. If you carry lack in your pocket, then though your hands hold gold, it will vanish. But if you carry wealth in your pocket, though your hands be empty, gold will come to fill them. The pocket is not outside you. It is the hidden depth of you. And what you place there, you spend everywhere. You have known the comfort of placing your hand upon a coin in your coat, the small reassurance of possession, the quiet security of knowing that you have something with which to meet the world. Yet, greater than any outward coin is the inner assurance, the inward possession of wealth. If you dare to feel rich within, if you dare to carry the certainty of abundance in the pocket of imagination, the outer world cannot remain the same. It must, by law, rearrange itself to reflect the contents of your pocket. For you always meet yourself in life. You cannot escape it. You may call it accident, you may call it fortune, but it is always the outpicturing of the secret you carry. Carry a hidden fear, and the world obliges you with reason to fear. Carry a hidden confidence, and the world rises up to meet you with support and opportunity. You are forever paying out of the invisible treasury of your own state of consciousness. So I say, keep something in your pocket. Keep not the memory of debt, nor the echo of empty cupboards, but the feeling of being rich. Each time you reach within yourself, find there the roll of bills, the letter of good news, the sign of supply. Feel it not once, but as often as doubt would creep in. For every man carries an inner pocket, and he alone decides what it contains. The poor man fills it with fear, the rich man fills it with wealth. And whether poor or rich outwardly, the pocket within will sooner or later reproduce itself in the facts of his life. Therefore, when I say to you that your Father's good pleasure is to give you the kingdom, I am saying that the invisible wealth of heaven waits only upon your assumption. It delights to pour itself forth. But you must open the pocket of your heart and place within it the assurance of having. You must carry that secret treasure with you as faithfully as a lover carries a token of the beloved. For what you cherish within becomes flesh without. Even now, as you listen, you may begin to feel the truth of it. Perhaps your mind protests, pointing to the figures in your account, the bills on your table. But these are the shadows of yesterday's pocket. They are the outpicturing of what you carried in secret before this moment. Change the contents of your pocket now, and the shadows of tomorrow will be different. For the law cannot fail, as within, so without. Take this, then, as the practice. Before you sleep tonight, slip your hand into the pocket of imagination. Place there a coin, not of metal, but of feeling. It may be the sense of security, the thrill of possession, the gratitude of one already supplied. Hold it there, guard it jealously, and carry it with you into sleep. In the morning, reach again into that pocket and find it still there. Carry it into your day and spend it wherever you go. Spend it in conversation, spend it in the posture of your body, spend it in the tone of your voice. Spend it as though it were infinite, and watch as the outer purse begins to fill with the shadow of the inner coin. For this is the mystery day, the kingdom is given, the Father delights to give, and you, the heir, must only carry the token of your inheritance in the secret pocket of imagination. Keep it there, guard it, feel it, and let the world see only the evidence of what you have already claimed within. Then the invisible will take on form, and you will know the truth of the promise. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Close your eyes for a moment and allow yourself to travel inward to that secret chamber where all things take root before they are born. The world outside tells you of lack, of limitation, of things withheld from your grasp, but within there is another story entirely. Within is the treasury of imagination, and here you may touch, see, hear, and feel anything you desire without permission, without delay, without condition. Here is the true pocket, here is the true storehouse of wealth, and it is from this unseen realm that every visible coin, every opportunity, every door that opens in your life must first emerge. Now imagine yourself in possession of the very thing you most long for. Do not think of the desire from a distance. Live within it. Let the boundaries of your thought dissolve and walk right into the scene where your wish is already fulfilled. If you desire money, do not think of money as something hoped for, but feel it as though it were already clutched in your hand. Hear the faint rustle of notes as you unfold them. Feel the texture of the paper, the crispness of new bills, or the smoothness of well-worn ones. Let the sensation be so real that your body responds, that your pulse quickens as if the possession were now. This is no empty fancy, no idle daydream. This is the act of creation itself, for imagination is the womb of reality, and what you dare to occupy inwardly must find its reflection outwardly. Do not be concerned with how it shall appear. That is not your labor, nor your burden. You are called to assume, to accept, to live within the finished act. Let the law of life, which is perfect and unerring, bring about the means. Your work is only to sustain the end. Just as the seed contains within itself the law of its unfolding, so the imaginal act contains within itself the means of expression. Once you feel yourself rich in imagination, once you walk as one who already possesses, then all the forces of the world are set in motion to make it fact. I tell you, nothing is withheld from the one who lives faithfully in imagination. To the senses, the pocket may appear empty, but in imagination, it overflows. And because the state precedes the fact, the world is compelled to conform to the unseen state. Everything you encounter outwardly is nothing more than the echo of what you have assumed inwardly. You cannot reap where you have not sown, and you cannot sow inward poverty while expecting outward wealth. But once you plant wealth within, once you take the feeling of security and fold it into the secret pocket of imagination, then the harvest must be abundance. Understand this clearly: facts do not create states, states create facts. You may argue that the empty account proves your poverty, but I say the empty account is the shadow of yesterday's state. It is the residue of what you once carried in your pocket. Change the state today, and tomorrow the facts must change to bear witness to it. A man who nightly falls asleep imagining himself rich cannot continue long in want. Life will bend itself to his assumption. Opportunities will appear, doors will open, circumstances will shift. For the state is the cause, and the fact is but its effect. Do you remember the words, "Call those things which be not as though they were"? That is not idle poetry. That is the description of the law. To call that which is not as though it were is to dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled, to feel the thing you long for as though it were already in your possession. This is the act of faith, and faith is always rewarded, for faith itself is the evidence of things not seen. You do not wait for the fact to appear to give thanks. You give thanks because in imagination it is already yours. And as surely as day follows night, the outer world will confirm your inward thanksgiving. Think now of one who nightly imagines himself holding a roll of notes in his hand. He does not merely think about money, he feels it. He presses the invisible bills between his fingers until the sensation becomes vivid. He hears within himself the sound of the cashier's voice saying, "Here is your payment." He feels the relief, the gratitude, the quiet confidence of being supplied. Though the world calls him poor, though the facts declare he has nothing, within himself he has already shifted the state. And the law, which never fails, brings to him the reflection of that state in due season. Perhaps through forgotten debts repaid, perhaps through sudden increase, perhaps through avenues he could never have devised. Yet come it must, for the outer is the servant of the inner. Do not despise small beginnings. A single inner act, faithfully assumed, outweighs 1,000 outer labors performed in doubt. To take a few moments each night and place yourself in the scene of fulfillment is to plant seeds in the eternal soil. and seeds, though buried and unseen, will break through the earth in their appointed hour. You cannot demand the instant harvest, but you can be certain of the inevitable one. The state, once accepted, precedes the fact, and the fact must follow as surely as the fruit follows the blossom. Therefore, cease measuring your progress by appearances. Appearances are the shadows of yesterday's thoughts. If you would see tomorrow's wealth, look not at the purse, but at the pocket. Look not at the ledger, but at imagination. Carry within you tonight the assurance of being supplied, and tomorrow the world will discover its way to furnish you with evidence. But if tonight you carry lack, tomorrow the world will have no choice but to echo lack. For the state always precedes, and the fact always follows. So I urge you, live now as though it were already so. Feel the possession, taste the joy, walk as one who already has. Refuse the testimony of the senses when it contradicts the assumption of the fulfilled desire. For the senses are but reporters of what has been assumed in the past, and you are free in this moment to assume anew. If you would change the outer world, change the contents of the pocket within. Place there not fear, not doubt, not longing, but possession, gratitude, and joy. Carry these as your hidden wealth, and the world must return them to you in visible form. You cannot fail if you persist. The law is impartial, perfect, exact. As water reflects the face, so life reflects the heart. As within, so without. The state you dare to occupy tonight will set in motion the facts of tomorrow. Therefore, choose carefully what you carry, for you will spend it everywhere you go. And know this with certainty: the world is but your pocket turned inside out. Faith is the bridge between the unseen and the seen, between the imaginal act and its outer confirmation. Without faith, the imaginal seed lies dormant, never quickening into form. With faith, the smallest assumption takes on a living power, and the whole universe bends itself to bring forth its likeness. Faith is not hard effort, nor strained belief, nor the anxious repetition of words. Faith is quiet possession, the simple resting in the feeling that what you have imagined is already yours. It is not an act of reaching, but of being. It is not the cry of a beggar, but the confidence of an heir. Faith sustains the imaginal act until the world, though slow to awaken, must at last mirror it. To hold the feeling of the wish fulfilled when all outer evidence declares the contrary is the greatest art. The senses rebel, they cry out with proof of want, of failure, of lack. They shout with their facts, their figures, their visible emptiness. But faith looks away from the seen and rests upon the unseen. Faith remembers that the world without is but the reflection of yesterday's inner state, and so it does not bow to appearances. Faith is the refusal to accept the testimony of the senses when it contradicts the deeper vision. Faith clings not to what is, but to what shall be, knowing that what shall be is already established within imagination. When I speak of sustaining the feeling of the wish fulfilled, I mean living in the consciousness of accomplishment. Imagine a merchant whose store is nearly empty. If he looks only at the shelves, he may despair, for the shelves whisper of failure. Yet if, in imagination, he sees the store overflowing, customers pressing in, goods moving rapidly, accounts filled with profit, then he walks as a prosperous man though the shelves remain bare. And because the state precedes the fact, in time the shelves will fill, the customers will come, the accounts will swell. He sustained the feeling of wealth, and wealth answered. Many abandon their vision because the outer world does not instantly conform. They plant the seed at night and dig it up in the morning, searching for growth. They imagine abundance 1 hour and then nullify it the next by dwelling in lack. Yet the law cannot be hurried, nor can it be deceived. The imaginal act, once assumed and faithfully sustained, contains within itself the appointed hour of expression. You are asked only to hold the state, to rest in its reality, to sustain the conviction until the outer shadow must form. Faith is the act of eating and drinking in the unseen. To eat is to inwardly accept, to inwardly digest the feeling of being already supplied. To drink is to refresh yourself with the assurance of possession. When you rise from such an inward meal, you may still see the barren field, but within you, the harvest has already begun. And because you have eaten and drunk of the inner substance, the outer must eventually provide the shadow of your inward feast. There is a parable of a man who nightly assumed that he was already in possession of his desire. His debts were great, his purse was empty, his circumstances hopeless. Yet each night before sleep, he entered into the scene of fulfillment. He felt the weight of money in his pocket, he heard the words of others congratulating him, he walked in imagination as one who had overcome. Outwardly, nothing changed at first. Days passed, then weeks, with no sign of relief. Yet he persisted. He would not abandon the state. He held it with quiet faith, as though he had placed his hand upon a secret treasure no man could steal. And then, in a manner wholly unexpected, a forgotten inheritance was released to him, and his circumstances transformed. The world, which had mocked him with its barrenness, bowed to his inner wealth. Do you see, then, why faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen? It is the very material out of which the invisible becomes visible. Without faith, the imaginal act is a shadow. With faith, it is substance. To have faith is to live in the reality of the unseen, to breathe it, to walk in it, until it becomes the very air you breathe. The world, though delayed, must at last acknowledge the authority of that inner reality. And so, the state always precedes the fact. Never does the fact create the state. Always the state creates the fact. The man who feels rich will find wealth. The man who feels poor will find poverty. For the world has no life of its own. It is the mirror of your inner condition. A mirror cannot smile until you smile. It cannot frown until you frown. So life cannot give you wealth until you feel wealthy. It cannot give you freedom until you feel free. The fact is but the echo, the delayed reflection of the state you have dared to assume. Let no one tell you that the outer must change first. The outer is powerless of itself. It is only the effect. The cause lies within. The tree does not create the seed. The seed creates the tree. The harvest does not produce the planting produces the harvest. So it is with states and facts. Occupy the state of the wish fulfilled, and you have planted the seed. The fact, when it appears, is only the harvest of that planting. Therefore, measure not by appearances. Do not ask, why has it not come? The seed is already planted, the fruit must appear in its time. Ask only, am I sustaining the feeling of the wish fulfilled? Am I guarding the state within me? If the answer is yes, then the harvest is certain. If the answer is no, then plant again, assume again, enter again into the scene of fulfillment. For each time you assume the state, you water the seed. Each time you live in the feeling, you nurture its growth. And though invisible to the eye, the roots are spreading, the life is stirring, the form is preparing to break forth. One moment of true faith outweighs a lifetime of doubt. One act of assumption held with persistence outweighs years of labor performed in fear. For faith is the key, the invisible substance, the bridge from shadow to form. And when you know this law, you will no longer despair at appearances, but will rejoice in the unseen, knowing that what you carry within is the sure prophecy of what you shall see without. Faith is the quiet assurance that the invisible you carry is more real than the visible you see. It is the substance of the unseen, the confidence that what you have imagined is already established in eternity. To walk in faith is not to strain after evidence, but to rest in possession. It is to know that the pocket is already full, though the hand feels empty. It is to spend freely from the inner treasury, confident that the outer world must supply what you have already accepted within. Faith is the great act of courage, the daring to live from the end while others bow before appearances. The outer world always lags behind the inner. What you see today is nothing more than the shadow of what you carried yesterday. Faith ignores the shadow and looks to the substance. Faith turns away from the voice that says, "It is not here," and listens instead to the inner voice that whispers, "It is done." Faith is the stillness of one who no longer begs but claims. To believe after the fact requires no faith, but to stand in possession when there is no evidence. That is the essence of creative power. Imagine, then, how the world must change when you live this way. Each time you reach within and touch the invisible coin of wealth, each time you feel the thrill of already having, you are exercising faith. You are spending unseen riches. You are trading with a currency that cannot fail. The world, slow though it may seem, must at last rise to meet your inner wealth with outer evidence. For it is written, "According to your faith be it unto you." Faith is not mere hope. It is the very substance of the unseen, the solid reality upon which facts must build themselves. Yet this treasure is delicate. It must be guarded. The pocket of the heart is easily filled with doubt if one is careless. Many guard their outer purses with locks and chains, yet leave the inner pocket open to every thief of fear, every whisper of despair. They walk with wealth in their hands, but poverty in their hearts, and soon the outer wealth dissolves, for the heart always dictates the form of life. You must guard your inner pocket more carefully than any vault, for what you carry there will sooner or later be spent in the marketplace of experience. Guarding the pocket does not mean straining or struggling. It is the simple discipline of refusing to admit what contradicts your desired state. When doubt knocks, you answer with possession. When fear whispers, you answer with thanksgiving. You do not argue with appearances, you replace them. You substitute the inner feeling of having for the outer fact of lack. Just as a king guards the seal of his authority, you guard the assumption of your desire already fulfilled, for that assumption is the key that commands all the subjects of life to obey. Every thought is an invitation. Every mood is a decree. What you permit to enter the pocket of imagination becomes the law of your world. Guard it with jealousy, for it is your kingdom. If you fill it with worry, worry multiplies. If you fill it with gratitude, gratitude blossoms into abundance. Guard the pocket of the heart as you would guard the most precious jewel, for it is the source of all you see. To guard the pocket is to live watchfully, inwardly alert, refusing to let stray images of lack settle within. When you feel the weight of worry creeping in, pause and replace it with the weight of wealth. When you sense the shadow of fear approaching, close the door and open instead the window to thanksgiving. Each time you do this, you reinforce the state of fulfillment. You polish the coin you keep within until it shines with such brilliance that the outer world cannot help but reflect it back. It is not enough to imagine once. The imagination must be sustained, protected, guarded from the erosion of doubt. Each day, you must reach into the pocket and find there the treasure you placed. Each night before sleep, you must tuck it away again as a mother tucks her child beneath the covers. For the world is eager to steal your faith, to lure you back into the conviction of lack. But if you are faithful, if you guard the pocket with vigilance, then no power on earth can rob you of your inheritance. Consider the farmer who plants a seed. He does not leave the field unguarded. He fences it against the beasts. He waters it against the sun. He pulls the weeds that would choke at it. So must you do with the seed of imagination. You have planted the coin of wealth in your pocket, but you must guard it. Doubt is the beast that would devour it. Fear the weed that would smother it. Impatience the sun that would scorch it. Guard it, water it with thanksgiving, shelter it with faith, and in its season it must bear fruit. The pocket of imagination is your true purse. Whatever you carry there is your wealth. You may walk outwardly with empty hands, yet if you guard the pocket of the heart, you are rich. And you may walk outwardly with gold and possessions, yet if you carry poverty within, all will dissolve. For the inner always overcomes the outer, the pocket of the heart always masters the purse of the world. Guard it, then, as the only treasure worth protecting. for from it flows the river of your life. Do not underestimate the power of a single guarded thought. One vision, held faithfully, can overturn a lifetime of lack. One assumption, sustained without wavering, can draw to you riches, opportunities, friends, and freedom. The world cannot resist the man who guards his pocket, for the world has no choice but to reproduce the state he sustains within. To guard your pocket is to guard your destiny. So tonight, when the world is still, slip your hand into the pocket of imagination and feel the coin you have placed there. Guard it as you drift into sleep, refusing the whispers of lack. Hold it through the night, and when morning comes, find it still there. Walk with it throughout the day, touching it in moments of doubt, polishing it with thanksgiving, guarding it from every thief of fear. And soon, the outer world, obedient and faithful, will deliver into your visible hand the wealth you have long carried in secret, for life has no choice but to yield to the contents of the pocket you guard. There is a secret known to those who live in the certainty of the unseen, and it is this: the law of life operates by substitution. The world you see does not vanish by struggle, nor does it change by argument or force. It is replaced. The old dissolves when the new is assumed, for two states cannot occupy the same space within you. If you cling to lack while reaching for wealth, you will remain in lack. If you persist in fear while begging for courage, fear remains your master. But the moment you substitute the state of having for the state of wanting, the old withers away and the new becomes flesh. It is never a matter of fighting appearances, but of replacing them with the inner image of your desire fulfilled. This substitution is not merely an exercise of thought, it is the transfer of feeling. You cannot simply recite to yourself that you are wealthy while secretly trembling at the sight of an empty purse. You must substitute the trembling with calmness, the worry with thanksgiving, the emptiness with fullness. It is the feeling of the wish fulfilled that displaces the feeling of lack. Just as darkness vanishes before light, so does the old state vanish when the new is assumed with conviction. Substitution is effortless when you understand this law. You do not strain to remove darkness, you simply light the lamp. You do not struggle against poverty, you embody abundance. You do not resist sickness, you wear the health of your imagination until it clothes your body. Every state is a garment, and you cannot wear two at once. You cannot dress yourself in wealth while still clinging to the rags of lack. You must take off the old garment before the new can cling to your shoulders. Yet to remove it does not mean to battle it, it means to forget it. Forget it by turning entirely to the new, as though the old never existed. To substitute is to give exclusive attention to what you choose, to walk in the end without glancing back. For the one who glances back, like Lot's wife, is frozen in the very state they seek to escape. Imagine then the creative power that lies in this act. To substitute one state for another is to rewrite the script of life. The beggar substitutes himself with the prince, the sick with the whole, the barren with the fruitful. And though appearances may take their time to conform, the substitution is already complete in consciousness. When you persist in the new, the world must surrender the old, for the outer is but a servant to the inner, and it cannot resist the master who no longer calls it by name. The key is persistence. Many attempt substitution once and, seeing no immediate change, return to the old garment. They dress themselves in wealth at night and wake again in poverty at dawn. They taste freedom for a moment and then bow once more to chains. Such inconsistency dissolves the creative act. For substitution works only when it is faithfully guarded, when the new state is worn as naturally as one's own skin. The moment you refuse to take it off, the outer world is forced to tailor itself to fit the garment you have chosen within. The mind is a house with many rooms, each room a state. You cannot occupy two rooms at once. When you walk into the room of abundance, you must close the door of lack behind you. If you keep the door ajar, glancing back at the old furnishings, you divide yourself. To substitute is to shut the door and forget the other rooms entirely. Walk in the room of wealth until it feels like home, and soon you will find that the outer corridors of life align themselves to match the room you inhabit within. And what is the means by which this substitution becomes natural? It is prayer, not prayer in the sense of pleading, but prayer in the sense of thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is the fragrance of the fulfilled desire. It is the song of possession. The soul that gives thanks lives already in the end, for gratitude can only spring from the sense of having. You cannot truly give thanks for what you still feel is missing. The very act of thanksgiving lifts you into possession, for to thank is to confess that it is already done. Gratitude is the alchemy of states. It transforms the invisible into the visible, the future into the present. It substitutes the tone of want with the tone of fulfillment. When you give thanks, you announce to yourself and to the unseen powers that the work is complete. You cease striving, you cease begging, you cease questioning. You rest in the Sabbath of creation, knowing that the seed is planted and the harvest inevitable. Gratitude is the seal upon the invisible contract, the sign that you have accepted the gift within. To live in thanksgiving is to live as though every prayer is already answered. It is to wake in the morning with a heart overflowing, not because circumstances demand it, but because imagination has decreed it. It is to say, thank you, before the evidence appears, and in saying it, to make the evidence inevitable. The one who gives thanks before receiving is the one who has understood the law, for he knows that the receiving is but the echo of the giving. Gratitude is the key that unlocks the treasure house, for it declares that the treasure is already yours. Consider the rhythm of life when lived this way. Every desire becomes an occasion for joy, for the moment you assume it fulfilled, you begin to thank. You walk in wealth though the outer purse is empty. You rejoice in health though the body still aches. You give thanks for freedom though the chains are not yet loosed. And as you persist, the chains fall away, the body is renewed, the purse overflows. For the world cannot resist the man who walks in thanksgiving, for his very being declares possession. This is the great secret. Substitution and gratitude walk hand in hand. You substitute the state of want with the state of fulfillment, and you fix it in place with thanksgiving. Gratitude is the guard that keeps the old state from returning. It is the sentinel at the door of consciousness, refusing entry to doubt or fear. Each time you give thanks, you reinforce the new garment. Each time you rejoice, you polish the jewel you carry within. Gratitude keeps alive the fire of faith until the world itself is set ablaze with its reflection. Do not wait for the evidence to give thanks. Evidence is slow, gratitude is instant. Evidence follows, gratitude precedes. Evidence is the shadow, gratitude the light. If you will persist in gratitude, the evidence will come of itself as surely as morning follows night. And when it comes, you will find that you are not surprised, for you have lived in possession all along. The harvest will feel natural, inevitable, the simple outpicturing of the thanksgiving you have carried within. Therefore, live now as though you have already received. Speak with the confidence of one who possesses, walk with the ease of one who knows, rest with the calm of one who has finished. Let every breath be thanksgiving, every thought a confession of fulfillment. For life listens not to your words alone, but to the vibration of your being. And when you vibrate in thanksgiving, you are declaring yourself the master of your fate. The world must obey. There is a stillness within you where the secret of creation lies, and in that stillness, all things are already complete. Every desire that rises in your heart is but a whisper of what already exists in eternity, waiting for you to embrace it. Yet many do not enter into possession because they do not dare to believe that the unseen is more real than the seen. They look only to appearances, and appearances betray them. But if you will turn inward and dwell in the end with unwavering faith, The invisible becomes the substance of your world, and the shadows of circumstance bend themselves to match the light you carry. The law does not ask you to toil, nor does it require you to strain. It asks you only to accept the truth of your desire as though it were already accomplished. This acceptance is not idle daydreaming, but an inner act of faith, and faith is imagination at rest in the feeling of fulfillment. When you enter the silence and lose yourself in the state of having, the outer world has no choice but to rearrange itself to mirror what you have assumed within. The promise is simple yet eternal: as within, so without. Think not that faith is blind. Faith is vision, but vision of a higher order. Faith sees beyond the dim outlines of sense and beholds the perfection hidden behind the veil. To the doubter, faith seems foolish, but to the one who knows, faith is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. Every great manifestation is born of this vision. You cannot demand proof before you believe, for belief itself is the proof of things not seen. The harvest is contained in the seed, and faith is the power that trusts the seed to unfold in its appointed time. To abide in faith is to abide in the unseen, not for a moment, not for a fleeting hour, but until it becomes the very atmosphere you breathe. When doubt knocks, you do not open the door. When appearances deny, you do not argue with them. You simply return inward to the state already prepared for you. Faith is a continuous act of substitution, replacing every whisper of fear with the steady tone of certainty. It is the refusal to descend into the clamor of appearances, the quiet insistence that what you have assumed within is more real than anything without. And how is this faith sustained? By persistence. For faith, when nourished, grows into certainty. At first it may seem fragile, like a tender shoot, but each time you return to the state of fulfillment, you strengthen it. Each act of imagining is a root sinking deeper into the soil of your being. Soon it becomes unshakable, and the storms of circumstance cannot uproot it. What began as an inner whisper becomes the loudest voice in your world, commanding all things to align with the image you have held. Do not measure the law by appearances. Do not say, "It has not yet come, therefore it will not come." To do so is to uproot the seed before it has borne fruit. The law is sure, and what is assumed within must harden into fact. You may not see the moment of transition, for it moves in secret, just as the seed germinates in darkness before it breaks the surface. But when you hold unwavering faith, the unseen works ceaselessly to bring forth the harvest. In time, what was hidden is revealed, and you will stand in wonder at the perfection of its unfolding. There is a discipline in this faith, but it is not harsh. It is the discipline of joy, the discipline of imagination. You turn again and again to the end, refusing to be swayed by the winds of circumstance. Each time you return, the end feels more natural, more alive, until it becomes effortless. Then, when it is most natural, the outer world bends itself to your inner reality, and the promise of faith is fulfilled. Yet faith does not stand alone. Alongside it walks the great companion of acceptance. Acceptance is the act by which you cease striving and allow the desire to be. To accept is to take your desire into yourself as though it were already given, to rest in the awareness that nothing more is required. Many fail because they seek to force the outcome, to dictate how and when it must come. But acceptance knows that the end is secure, and the means are not your concern. The river of life flows in ways beyond your grasp, and when you accept the end, the current carries you to its fulfillment without effort. Acceptance is surrender, not to fate, but to the creative power within. It is the yielding of the little self to the greater self, the recognition that imagination itself is God, and that God has already completed the work. When you accept, you step into alignment with that work, and what seemed far off draws near. Acceptance strips away the last vestiges of doubt, for in acceptance there is no waiting, only having. To say, "I accept," is to declare, "It is done." This acceptance must be felt, not spoken with empty words. You cannot accept in theory while secretly resisting in heart. True acceptance is the stillness that follows the act of creation, the Sabbath rest of the soul. It is the quiet joy that arises when you know the harvest is assured. You need not check the soil each hour to see if the seed is sprouting. You know it is alive, and so you rest. That rest is the evidence of acceptance. To dwell in acceptance is to dwell in peace. The anxious heart does not accept, for it still longs, it still questions, it still doubts. But the heart at peace has already received. To cultivate acceptance, enter the silence and imagine the end fulfilled, then feel the ease of one who already holds it. Let the desire dissolve into possession until no effort remains. Then rise and walk as though it were true, for in the higher realm it is. Faith and acceptance, walking together, are unstoppable. Faith holds the vision and acceptance seals it. Faith sees what is unseen and acceptance rests in it as though it were seen. Faith plants the seed and acceptance allows it to grow. Faith declares, it is, and acceptance answers, it is done. Together they form the perfect union by which every desire is brought into manifestation. Do not underestimate the power of this union, for when you live in faith and acceptance, you cease struggling against life. You are no longer tossed about by appearances, no longer anxious over how things will unfold. You have entered the Sabbath of creation, the holy rest where the work is already finished. And in that rest, life becomes a mirror of your inner certainty, faithfully reflecting the state you have assumed. Even now, if you will but close your eyes and feel the end, you can taste the sweetness of acceptance. Feel it as real and give thanks. Rest in the assurance that what you hold within will clothe itself without. The unseen is already yours, and the outer world is but the shadow awaiting the command to fall in line. Faith holds the lamp, acceptance lights the path, and together they lead you unfailingly to the fulfillment of your desire. There is a mystery in the unseen that men rarely pause to acknowledge, yet it governs the turning of their lives with unfailing accuracy. Every event that unfolds, every circumstance that appears, is but the outpicturing of an inner state once assumed. To the casual observer, it may seem as though life is determined by chance, by luck, or by the shifting forces of the world. But to the awakened, it becomes clear that nothing happens without first being imagined, whether knowingly or in ignorance. The world is forever reflecting back to man the contents of his own consciousness, and if he would change what he sees, he must first change what he is within. It is here that the great secret reveals itself, that the outer is nothing more than the echo of the inner. When you see discord in the world, it is because discord is being entertained within. When you witness abundance, it is because abundance has been accepted in the depths of being. The law does not err, it cannot be deceived, it does not reward or punish, but simply reflects. The mirror of life takes no judgment, it only shows what is placed before it. And so man, believing himself a victim of circumstance, is but a victim of his own forgetfulness, not knowing that he himself is the cause of all that he experiences. Yet, when he awakens to this truth, when he realizes that the creative power is within him and not without, a great shift occurs. He ceases to fight the shadows and begins to master the light. He stops blaming others and begins to govern himself. He no longer chases effects but returns to the cause, shaping the unseen until the seen bows in obedience. This is the true mastery of life, the recognition that the world is imagination pushed out, and that by assuming the state desired and dwelling in it, one transforms the entire course of events. But how is this assumption practiced? It is not enough to merely wish. Wishing places the desire in the distance and strengthens the sense of lack. To assume is to step boldly into possession, to wear the state as a garment and feel it as one already clothed. Imagination becomes the workshop, and in that workshop you craft the scenes, the tones, the moods that align with the fulfillment of your desire. You play them within until they are natural, until they no longer feel foreign, but inevitable. And when they are natural, the law is set in motion and the outer must conform. Do not think the assumption must be forced. It is not effort that secures it, but ease. Just as you slip into sleep by relaxing, so do you slip into the assumption by surrendering. You yield to the feeling of having, and in that yielding the state becomes alive. Each time you revisit it, you deepen the groove in consciousness until it becomes your dwelling place. And as you abide there, the world reorganizes itself to mirror your abiding. The key lies in persistence. Many touch the state briefly and then abandon it when outer appearances do not instantly comply. But the wise know that appearances are but the slow echo of a faster reality. They do not waver but persist, holding to the unseen with steadfastness, knowing that the outer must in time reflect the inner. Persistence is the art of remaining faithful to the end, even when the senses deny it. It is the refusal to return to the old state, the continual choice to dwell in the new until it becomes your only reality. And as persistence deepens, something wondrous occurs. The line between imagination and reality dissolves. What was once felt only in the silence becomes indistinguishable from the waking world. The state assumed begins to color every perception, every conversation, every action, until the outer inevitably bends to align with it. The promise of the law is fulfilled, and man stands in awe, realizing that he has touched the creative power of God. This realization brings with it a profound responsibility, for if every state assumed must in time become fact, then one must be careful in the choice of states. To dwell in fear, in resentment, in lack, is to give these things the power to manifest. To indulge in negative imagination is to sow seeds that will bear bitter fruit. Yet to dwell in love, in abundance, in joy, is to sow seeds of delight that must in their season blossom into visible form. The law is impartial. It brings forth according to the seed planted. And so, the wise guard their inner conversations, knowing that what is whispered in the secret place will one day be shouted from the rooftops of life. Consider how simple yet profound this is. You need not strive to manipulate the world. You need not beg others to change or wait for conditions to improve. You need only turn inward, assume the end, and persist. The power is not in the outer, it is in the inner act of imagining. That act, sustained and accepted, becomes the very fabric of your reality. This is the path of mastery, to live from within rather than react to without. As you grow in this practice, you will see how every event carries the imprint of a prior state. You will trace each circumstance back to an inner assumption, whether chosen consciously or unconsciously. This knowledge frees you, for you no longer fear the outer world. You understand that its source is within you, and therefore you hold the key to its transformation. You cease to live as one at the mercy of chance, and you step into your rightful place as the creator of your world. It is here, in this understanding, that life takes on a new rhythm. No longer are you anxious about the future, for you know the future is shaped by the state you occupy now. No longer do you cling to the past, for you know the past is but a shadow of prior states, powerless unless you carry it forward. You live in the eternal now, choosing in each moment the state you will assume, and in that choice lies the power to determine all that follows. Even now, as these words move through you, the invitation is clear. Choose this day whom you will serve. Will you serve the state of lack, rehearsing its tones and strengthening its grip, or will you serve the state of fulfillment, clothing yourself in its ease and dwelling in its joy? The choice is always yours, and the law will honor whichever you assume. And so you are called to live deliberately, to awaken from the sleep of unconscious creation and step into the joy of conscious manifestation. To know that your imagination is the only reality, and that what you dare to assume and persist in must become fact. To realize that the unseen is the cause, and the seen is the effect. To understand that the law is faithful, and it cannot return void. If you would but take this truth into yourself, not as a theory, but as a living practice, your world would transform before your very eyes. You would cease to wander in confusion and begin to walk in certainty. You would cease to question how and begin to rest in the assurance that it is already done. For in the unseen, it is finished, and in the seen, it must be revealed.